Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I am willing to sell them my forgiveness? My parents expected me to be independent the minute I turned 18. They gave me the money they have saved up for my education, and they started charging me rent about $500 a month. I was lucky enough to have a partial scholarship, and I found a job in the city my university was in, so I moved there before the school year began. With my parents' money, my scholarship, and my wages, I was able to scrape by. I rarely, if I ever, spoke with my parents, as I was kind of busy. I guess they decided that they didn't want that kind of relationship with my younger siblings because they were not presented with the same option. They both lived at home all through university and even afterwards. I got $5,000, while my brother and sister got their school paid for. I am 34 now, with a decent job and a great girlfriend whom I will be marrying this summer. I sent my parents and siblings an invitation. They called me to ask why they were not involved in the wedding. I responded that they hadn't really been part of my life in 16 years, and that I was being nice by inviting them. They said that they acknowledged that they made mistakes when I was young, but that it was in the past, and that I should get over it. Against my fiancé's advice, I sent an itemized bill for everything I paid for myself that they freely gave my brother and sister. And I said if they wanted to be a part of my life, they had to ante up. They said that they cannot afford that because they are in debt still from helping my siblings out. I just laughed at that and said I hoped that I would see them at the wedding and hung up. Now my family are all getting a hold of me to let me know how much I'm hurting my parents. The thing is that I don't want their money, and I don't want anything from them at all other than their attendance at my wedding. If they can't do that, then I'm fine with our yearly phone call. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Maybe the itemized bill was a bit much, but I imagine it was cathartic for you. Your parents haven't been around in a decade and a half. They have a lot of nerve to ask to be involved. Not being involved in your wedding is just reaping what they sowed. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. Yeah, it is an a-hole move in a vacuum, but this is more about catharsis and appropriate response. I find this way is one of those really good ideas for dealing with crazy people. I need help with one detail. Is this the first time his family contacted him in 16 years? After the wedding invite? Because wow. I mean, it's not the a-hole all day long, even if sending a list is spiteful. But 1, it is an understandable spite. And 2, this is am I the a-hole, not am I spiteful. They said that they cannot afford that because they're in debt still from helping my siblings out. I'm sorry, what? Then why did they do it in the first place? Not the a-hole OP. Perhaps siblings can pay back now. If their perceived choice was going into debt to support their adult kids or lose almost all contact with them like OP, it's not surprising they picked debt. Of course, the reality is the choice was a bit less extreme. Let them live at home rent-free and pay what they could without going into debt. I mean, there's a middle ground that the parents haven't quite figured out. The lack of contact is also a choice that's not financial, because they could have at least checked on OP more, even if they cut him off financially. It sounds like they emotionally cut him out too. Even if OP was upset over the financial cut-off, they should have kept reaching out, because why he was upset was understandable. The way OP explains it, it seems he was the one to cut off contact. I was kind of busy, not they never called or they were kind of busy. Because he was busy. Busy fending for himself after his parents cut him off and gave him no help. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to rotate events between my parents? It's a tale as old as time. My parents stayed together for the kids. They got divorced 5 years ago, basically the second my youngest sibling left for college. I, 35 female, am married with kids of my own, and nothing much changed for us other than now seeing my parents separately for the most part. I have 4 kids, all in elementary or middle school. This means we have lots of stuff going on, from school plays to sports matches to recitals. My parents are active and involved grandparents, and they both try to come to as many of these things as possible. We had, of course, about 2 years where these things were not really happening so much, but now we're finally back to a normal schedule, and these types of things are back on. For some reason, my parents' divorce proceedings have dragged on for longer than they should have, and the financial stuff is still being hashed out. Unfortunately, it has gone from relatively civil to hostile. I'm not taking sides. I love both my parents, as do my kids, and their divorce is not my business. But lately, My dad has been saying he doesn't want to go to places where my mom is going to be and has asked if he can rotate the grandchild events with her. I understand him not wanting to interact with her. That's fine. But he can easily attend these things without having to. He can sit on the other side of the bleachers or auditorium and never even see her. My mom is perfectly content to do just that and doesn't want to have to miss anything. This is all Dad. I told him there's really no reason he can't go to, say, a school play and just sit as far away from Mom as possible. She doesn't want to talk to him either, and neither are the type to ever make a scene. So no, I'm not going to make a rotation. They are both invited to all of these things, and Dad is free to go or not. His choice. Needless to say, Dad is not pleased. Mom thinks it's perfectly fair, but she's obviously biased. Husband agrees with me. One brother agrees with me, but that's because he's likely proposing soon and is worried about Dad being like this for all the wedding-related events. My other siblings are younger and don't really have that sort of thing on their minds and are saying I'm being unfair to Dad. But maybe they have a point? Am I the a-hole for how I'm handling this? Not the a-hole. Your parents, particularly your dad, need to do better for their grandkids if they want to be involved in your life. It sounds like you are being incredibly respectful of the divorce, not taking sides, etc. Rotating events also creates huge logistical problems. You can't rotate one-off events like graduations, etc. All that's going to end up happening if you do is you create a whole new set of problems where someone complains that grandparent A got to go to XYZ, and they were way more important than the events grandparent B got invited to. Or at Christmas, grandparent A has somewhere else they can go, but it's their turn, even though it might be better to have grandparent B. Not to mention that a parent with a million kid activities to coordinate doesn't need to worry about even more logistics for each event, big or small, for no good reason. Not the a-hole. Your dad's acting like a petulant child. And your younger sibs are wrong. If granddad doesn't want to see grandma, then granddad better question the love for his grandkids. He's there for the kids. If he can't look at that way, then it's a personal problem. Your younger sibs don't see it this way because they don't have kids yet. It's weird, but once you have kids, you realize that you do a lot of things for your children and grandchildren. And a mature person would see that sometimes compromises have to be made, and you may not like it, but you want to be there to support them. Definitely true about having to think about kids. Though my brother, who's planning to propose soon, doesn't have kids, but is thinking like me, because he doesn't want to be in a position of having to choose which parents attends his engagement party and wedding. And he wants kids, so I bet he's thinking about what will be when he does have them. I think the situation would be different if it was an abusive marriage. If this is all just pettiness or resentment, then it's on your dad to decide what's more important, being an active father and grandparent, or trying to punish your mom by having her barred from family events. Whether he views it as his punishment or not, that's what it is. Give it time. Don't uninvite anyone and he should come around. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she needs to pay for childcare or I'm not going to her wedding? My female 25 sister's wedding, female 28, is in a couple months. She recently sent out invitations. I was invited as a regular guest, not a bridesmaid or maid of honor, since we live a state apart. And obviously, there's a certain level of involvement and time that goes into being part of a bridal party, which I understand. I want to be there for my sister, and obviously I'd like to see her get married. But the problem is, I'm a single mom. My son is 6, and when he's not at school, I need to be home watching him. So being out for hours at a time isn't really in the cards for me right now. My sister's wedding is child-free too. Since it's taking place in her state, I'd need to commute. And I'd probably have to be gone from my house for 2 full days. I can't have family watch my son since they'll all be at the wedding. And I don't really have friends who will babysit for 2 days. I contacted my sister and asked if she'd be willing to let my son come to the wedding with me and explained he couldn't be left alone so young and that I didn't have anyone to watch him. She responded by telling me her no children policy was strict and she wouldn't make exceptions. I explained my situation again and said I need some form of childcare or to bring him with me. I then asked her if she could pay me to hire a nanny or babysitter to watch him. She got offended and said children and weddings are both parts of life and I need to just figure it out. It's my kid, my problem. Which sure, that's true. but also her wedding and her making it a problem by not allowing me to bring my kid. I told her she could either pay for my childcare or I wouldn't be going to her wedding, which all she did was call me ridiculous and entitled. She said she shouldn't have to pay for my child, and that part of being an adult is knowing how to take care of that kind of thing. I think that's ridiculous. Money is tight. Childcare is expensive. I can't magically afford for someone to watch my 6-year-old, and most people would just let me bring him to the wedding. My sister says she's definitely not paying for childcare, and I guess you're not going to the wedding then. And now, my whole family is mad at me for not being there for my sister. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I'm not trying to force my sister to pay for anything, and it's totally fine if I can't come. She accepts that, and I just don't go. It only became a problem when my entire family came after me for not going to the wedding. I'm not mad at my sister for not paying. I'm mad at her for turning the family against me and saying I don't want to come to the wedding, and complaining about me behind my back to my parents. She complained about me not going to the wedding as if I was purposely avoiding it. Now for the comments. You're the a-hole. I get where you're coming from, but you went about this all wrong. I'm sorry, but it's not within my budget to travel so far. I'd also arranged to pay for childcare when I get there. I said my best. Full stop. Don't ask for handouts from a stressed out bride. Is that what people do? Good Lord. If she's gracious, she or the family will offer a solution. But you don't ask for that. That's where the entitlement came from. In the end, the kid is your responsibility, no one else's. Everyone sucks here. Opie has no right to demand childcare. It's her child and her responsibility, not her sister's. But her sister also has no right to be angry at her sister for not coming. She can choose to have a child-free wedding, but she cannot demand that people with children attend. It doesn't sound like the sister is upset if Opie doesn't attend. She was only upset at Opie's demand that she pay. It does seem that she sent her flying monkeys to shame her sister for not showing up. She also seemed comfortable telling her sister how to parent. Everyone sucks here for different reasons. You're the a-hole. It's no one else's responsibility to pay for your childcare. Completely unreasonable ask. Asking a bride to stay away, your sister of all people, to pay for childcare for a night or two so you can attend their special event is not unreasonable at all between sisters? Like, hey sis, I can't afford this thing. Do you really want me there? If so, I have to ask, can you pay for the childcare so I can attend? Otherwise, I may just have to bow out. If the conversation went like this and Opie's sister reacted with her stress and psycho in the moment, it might be fine. But Opie wasn't asking unreasonable things. This is across state lines. A travel wedding and a sister who's not even a part of the wedding party. It didn't have to be a screaming match. It could have been, oh no sis, I can't pay for that with all the wedding expenses. I'm so sorry you can't come. Like, what planet are we living on that is abnormal to ask a sister for help in a situation they're being put in by their sister? What the heck? Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cut my hair for my sister's wedding? I, 23 female, have a long golden hair that is down to my mid-thigh. I'm 5'4", and I've been growing it out for a really long time. I had waist-long golden blonde hair at 14, and I was friends with this one girl who would often tell me how damaged and frizzy it was, and how it would look so much nicer if I cut it short. It was then brown as I had cut it, and I felt that it looked plain and not healthier. Having long or frizzy hair doesn't automatically mean it's damaged. I later learned that she was jealous and sabotaging me, and decided I'd never listen to hair advice again. Now, my sister, 25 female, is getting married. We are all very excited. Last week, she pulled me aside and said my hair is too long. It looks bad, and she doesn't want it in her wedding photos. I thought it was really rude, but I told her I'd wear it up. She said it's too long to wear up, and even when I wear it up, it looks too big for my head and body. I told her that's fine, I won't be in the photos. She told me I'm bound to be in the photos if I'm there, so I told her I won't go as I'm not cutting my hair. My family are not only agreeing with her saying it's her big day, but also saying other things like I won't be able to get a job, I look scruffy, I'm getting old to have hair that long and demanding I cut it. I want to be clear, my hair is no longer frizzy. I used good shampoo for wavy hair so it's long and wavy. It's also thick so it isn't thinning. It's very shiny and I take good care of it and get trimmed so there's no split ends. I get a lot of compliments towards my hair, and I've never had any trouble with working, and I see no reason to cut it other than the wedding, which I'm not willing to do. I suspect my sister is jealous and doesn't want my hair to take away her attention, but of course, she can't outright say that. Even if your hair is frizzy, they have no right to even request, let alone demand such a thing. Not a-hole. Exactly. I have a curly hair and sometimes it is frizzy, but other people just have to deal with it when that happens. Don't cut your hair for anyone else but yourself. If you want to do it, then it's fine to cut it. If you don't, then you shouldn't. You couldn't ask your sister to dye her hair blonde/brown/black/pink/golden because that would look better with her dress on her wedding day. So why should she be the one telling others to change anything about their appearances? She either wants you there or she doesn't. Same. 3A/3B hair, and I'm sick of people having an issue and making comments on days it's frizzy. Not the a-hole. This obsession some brides have over their wedding photos is really unhealthy and bizarre to me. You just have natural long hair. She should get over it. The irony is that most of the time the photos are forgotten about after the first couple of years. I had a bridesmaid that decided her super pale skin needed a spray tan 24 hours before the wedding. She also went nuclear blonde and neon green nail polish with the deep purple bridesmaid dresses. There was nothing I could do on the day of, so I rolled with it. But I do make a point of reminding her of how she looked, and is now mortified by it, because the goal was as much attention as possible. Keep your hair, the pictures won't matter down the road. Not a-hole. I'm very sorry for this misfortune, but the description of your bridesmaid had me rolling. Oh, I have one photo up from my wedding 20 plus years ago. I still giggle whenever I look at it. She did it to herself. Beautiful dress, Cheeto skin, nuclear blonde hair, and that nail polish. She thought she looked good, but everyone else was wondering what was up with the bridesmaid who missed the look. Since I wanted a marriage more than I wanted a wedding, I wasn't thrilled, but the idea of freaking out on her would have helped anyone on the day of. Am I the a-hole for hosting a fundraiser, bluntly saying that it was for a teenager whose parents left her homeless? Her parents are furious. My youngest daughter is a senior in high school. One of her best friends, Lily, just turned 18 as the school year was starting and her parents kicked her out of the house that same day. My daughter told me she was sleeping on different friends' couches and talking about dropping out to work a job. So my family took her in so she could finish school. I just can't imagine a parent kicking their kid out like that. So after we did that, my daughter and Lily decided to have a community barbecue/bake sale to fundraise for some money to cover food and housing expenses. It wasn't anything I ever asked for, but the girls wanted to do something to contribute for groceries and bills. The girls made flyers and little promos for social media, and they were pretty straightforward about what was going on. They said, community barbecue/fundraiser for Lily, and a note from Lily saying, as you may know, my parents kicked me out of the house and cut off any financial support on my 18th birthday, leaving me homeless with no money or car. The Smiths gave me a home, expecting nothing in return except I stay in school and graduate. I wanted to do something to give back and pay my own way. Anyway, I shared that on social media and so did the girls, and a lot of their friends at school. The barbecue was a huge success. Almost all of our neighbors came by, and so many kids from my daughter's school and a lot of our family and family friends. The girls ended up raising several $1,000s, which I ended up putting in an education fund for Lily, where I'm also putting stuff like the cash she gives me from her job for groceries, and stuff like that. I'm planning on surprising her with it closer to graduation. Anyway, Lily's parents are irate. They saw that I posted a flyer on a community Facebook page and most everyone in town saw it. I got a call from her dad screaming into the phone at me for slandering their family online, which I felt like was such BS. I told him to either buck up and act like a parent ought to or lose my number. He started yelling on the phone again, so I hung up and blocked his number. Then I got a bunch of calls from another number. It was Lily's mom, getting angry at me about how I don't know what she and her husband have been through, and it was trashy of me to be begging the whole town for money for myself and acting like it was their fault. I was like, well, it was your fault. And she got so angry and said that she and her husband had given her daughter everything, and that she was ungrateful, which I feel is BS because they ain't even giving her a roof over her head. Am I the a-hole for letting my daughter and her friend who was kicked out at 18 host a fundraiser that was very blunt? Said it was to raise money after her family kicked her out? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Frankly, that's just a horrible thing for a parent to do. If they don't want to get slandered, maybe don't kick your child out the instant they become an adult. As many people have pointed out, it isn't actually slander against the parents if it's true. I used slander for lack of a better term. The idea that kids magically become adults the moment they turn 18 is such BS. These awful parents were only acting as parents because they were legally required to be. The moment their child was legally an adult, they felt like they were off the hook. I'm sure their daughter is better off without them, but what a difficult journey that is. Loving parents try to make their kids' life better, not worse. Not the a-hole. They're just annoyed they've been called out on their horrible behavior, and now everyone knows about their crappy parenting. They're ashamed and angry that they've been exposed, but they're putting the blame on you instead of reflecting on their own issues. You could end a thread right there, honestly. They kicked an 18-year-old out on day one of adulthood, unprepared in the slightest. Unless she's the worst person ever. That's absolutely messed up. Not the a-hole. Imagine kicking your high schooler out of the house and then getting upset at people trying to help her out. They're probably angry they can't get their hands into fundraiser money. Right? They sound like the type of parents who think their daughter owes them something since they gave her life even though she didn't ask to be born. Infuriating. Next story. Am I the a-hole for embarrassing our female coworker? Both my husband and I work for a dispensary as co-owners and managers. He is inventory manager and I'm kitchen manager, though up until last month I was at a different shop. I recently got the transfer approval. In our shop, we only employ 11 people, 3 women including me, and 8 men. One of the women is the owner's wife and she handles the finances while the other woman, Jen, handles the front end. Now, to be blunt here, Jen is a smoke show. Drop-dead gorgeous young lady, and to be blunt again, all the men here drool over her. Probably my husband included. I mean, even I drool over her, let's be honest. But she's also, I don't know how to put it. She runs through the men here. She has already dated or hooked up with 3 of them, and recently her eyes went to my husband. I'm used to this type of behavior because my husband is also a solid 10 on a bad day. But she also knows he is married, so there is definitely a disrespectful aspects of things there. However, she did not know that I was his wife until this morning. So my husband came to me yesterday and was like, "Listen, Jen has been trying to take breaks with me, and she often gets into my truck without asking whenever she sees me sitting outside, asking that I smoke her up and being flirty, as in touching his arms and legs type of thing. So I asked if he wanted me to handle it, and he said, please, but don't be rude about it. Because he had already told her several times he was married and her only response is, "Oh, I already know that," and continues on her BS. Well, I knew this break was at 10 and I made a point to come out a few minutes later. I walked to the truck and lo and behold, Jen is in the front seat. I hear my husband say, "That's my wife's seat," and she just giggles and says she is keeping it warm. Please note we are in our 30s and this girl is 23. So, I go up to the window and say, "Thanks for keeping my seat warm, but I'm here now." She just scowls at me and says, "We are kind of talking here." So I go, "Yes, I see that, and now I would like to speak to my husband," with a smile on my face. Her face drops and she gets out quickly. Now the problem is that 3 of the guys were sitting there too, and they immediately start laughing, which embarrassed her even more. The owner's wife said I should have pulled Jen aside and said something versus embarrass her in front of everyone. Am I the a-hole? Apparently, Jen and the owner's wife are the only one who thinks so. Not the a-hole. Wait, so your husband directly told her to stop her behavior. It was unprofessional/unwanted. It's not cute or funny or whatever. And she continued to harass him? Why has she just not been fired? She is the owner's wife's cousin. She has been reported several times, but due to this girl being related to the owners, nothing is done. How many times has your husband had a documented meeting with HR about being harassed by this woman? Does he have the documentation showing that HR has declined to take care of the issue? He personally has only reported it once as it just recently started happening, and he does have the written statement he made to the owner's wife. This was 5 days ago. However, there are 2 other male employees whom have reported her at least 3 times between the 2 of them, and one of them didn't get a written statement as the owner's wife said it wasn't necessary. Next story. Am I the a-hole for turning away a friend after he showed up to my birthday dinner without RSVPing? I had a birthday dinner this weekend. A week before the dinner, I sent a mass text out to 8 of my friends, telling them the location, date, and time, and to let me know by a certain date if they are coming so that I can make a reservation at a hibachi place. Most people said they could come. One friend said they couldn't make it, and another friend never responded. A couple days later, I was talking to one of the friends I invited about the dinner, and they said they thought the friend who didn't answer was coming, but they weren't sure. I said that he needs to RSVP, so I have the exact head count for the reservation. I never heard from the friend who didn't respond, so I made a reservation accordingly. I should add that before I made a reservation, I texted in the mass text chain with, "Last chance to RSVP as I'm making the reservation at this time today." The day of my dinner, the friend who didn't respond showed up right as the hostess was asking for the name of the reservation. I told her that we had an extra person show up, and I apologized. She looked to see if she could place all of us but was unable to find a place to accommodate an extra person without us having to wait 2 hours. So I told a friend who didn't RSVP that he could not join us for dinner. He got mad and told me I was a bad friend. He told me it was embarrassing to be turned away from a birthday party and that he wasted time and gas coming out. I told him he should have RSVP'd. He told me he told our friend that he might be going. I told him that wasn't good enough, and he should have told me. He told me that I should have asked him if he was coming. Am I the a-hole? Edit. For those stating I should have assumed he was coming because another friend said he might be, I don't work off of hearsay. Especially since the friend who said this is known for saying lots of things that don't turn out to be true or turn out to not happen. I never take what they say seriously. Now for the top comments. He got mad and told me I was a bad friend, says the guy who didn't RSVP 2 times. He apparently told me he told our friend that he might be going. Even then, he was not sure if he was gonna come. He told me that I should have asked him if he was coming. What does this guy think an RSVP is? Does he want someone to take a paper slip with, "Will you come to my birthday dinner?" Tick yes or no? Someone like this is not a friend. Not the whole. Cut him off from your life. You don't need this toxic and manipulative embarrassment of a human being for a friend. He told someone who wasn't involved in making the reservation that he might be coming. He didn't even mention it to OP. He clearly was just digging himself into a hole by blaming OP and couldn't even see it. Nice friend. Actually, I'm thinking he was hedging his bets. He didn't know if he was going because he was waiting to see if he had any better options for then. He didn't, or his first choice fell through, so he just went with a backup option. Not the whole. He had 2 chances to RSVP. He ignored both. That's on him. Not the whole. You ask people to RSVP. He didn't. You didn't include him in the reservation. End of story. Telling another friend he might be coming is not an adequate RSVP. Or actually not an RSVP at all. I was like OP's friend back in my 20s. Can't speak for the friend, but for me, I was really distracted all the time and unable to make a commitment. Until my friends let me know that my behavior was not okay. I just went along my merry way, being obtuse and rude but without ill intent. I'm not saying this to excuse OP's friend, more to point out that OP did exactly the right thing by drawing a line in the sand. Best case scenario is that OP's friend is just flighty, and not a true fundamental a-hole, and he just needed a kick in the pants to shape up. Hopefully this will do the trick. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my stepbrother and sister-in-law's expenses after kicking them out? I, 29 female, was hosting a party for my mom and stepdad's wedding anniversary. I flew out my 3 step-siblings and their partners to all spend a week in my city, and then on the weekend we would have the party. I and my husband live in a pretty small flat, so there wasn't enough rooms for everyone to stay. So we offered for my stepbrother Mark and his partner Fran to stay on our yacht for the week. No one in our family likes Fran, because she's a militant social justice warrior and can't keep her opinions to herself, and she's always no general etiquette. So the week went on with Fran making out-of-pocket comments about our city and lifestyle, which was expected but still annoying. One night, me and my husband were attending a party and I didn't really fancy inviting Fran and Mark, but we did. And surprisingly everything was fine, though we didn't see them for most of the evening. We invited a few people back to our yacht for an after-party and of course Mark and Fran were there. Fran was quite intoxicated and started again making inappropriate comments that were making people feel a bit awkward. One of our friends was telling a story about how he did something funny that incurred a fine. Fran got upset. and said how the fine he had paid was more than most people make in a year, and he should be ashamed to be happy to throw that much money around. She said she was sad to see the amount of money being spent in our city and how ungrateful and wasteful we all are. Cue awkward silence. I jokingly said that next time Fran should take herself camping because I didn't spend the money to fly her out here, treat her to dinners and parties and yachts for her to be sad. And everyone laughed and moved on. Eventually, everyone left and we went to bed. The next morning, I told Mark and Fran that I was humiliated and horrified by her behavior, and I wouldn't have people being disrespectful to me while staying on my property. Of course, they were still welcome to come to the party and the flights home were taken care of, but they couldn't stay on the yacht until the party. I probably would have relented if there'd been genuine remorse from them, but Fran doubled down on her attitude and I'd had it. After a brief argument, they left and went to stay in a hotel. The party went off without a hitch. We were all keeping the peace for parents' sake. A few days after they'd gone home, they sent me a bill for their hotel stay, saying that since I'd kicked them off the yacht, I should pay for their expenses. I sent them a response telling them where they could put their bill. This made the rounds and my parents are now asking that I pay the bill. As it was a lot of money for them and not for me, they came on holiday with the expectation that they wouldn't have to budget for accommodation. I said they wouldn't have had to if they'd had an ounce of decency, and that I won't be paying. But my parents are begging me so that it doesn't impact Mark and Fran financially. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Since this is a point of contention, yes, we did ask Mark and Fran if they were okay with the after party. Mark in particular was a fan of someone coming to the after party, so was very enthusiastic about it. And Fran said yes also. Had they wanted to go to bed, we'd have gone elsewhere. They came on holiday with the expectation that they wouldn't have to budget for accommodation. Well, you invited them and accommodated them with the expectation that you wouldn't be inconvenienced or humiliated by their disrespectful, sanctimonious behavior. So they should just learn to live with their disappointment just as you do with yours. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. Opie paid for an entire trip and Fran wanted to criticize them for it, while still reaping the benefits. This isn't about rich versus poor. I get why people can get upset with those living lavishly. It is about benefiting from someone's kindness and showing no tact or grace or respect. That's a good point. Fran may well have a point and or justification for her arguments, but for goodness sake, there's a time and a place. Spouting off about yacht-owning people being evil whilst on said yacht is kind of stupid. That said, I'm a bit confused why someone has a small flat but owns a yacht. I feel like yacht-owning people would live in some kind of large home. But what do I know? I'm not one of the yacht-owning people. Just about the yacht thing, in our city it's pretty common. Property is super expensive. And even if you have an obscene amount of money, you won't get the kind of space you would find in New York City or Dubai, for example. They just don't build like that here. So our apartment is quite pokey. It is a 5-bedroom, but with my other step-siblings there and my husband using one as an office, we didn't have any spare space, and the rooms aren't ones where you could double up. That said, even this apartment was multiple times the cost of the yacht, so the yacht wasn't out of our means of spending. And it's the same for so many people here. Info. One of our friends was telling a story about how he did something funny that incurred a fine. Would someone who doesn't own a yacht consider this a funny anecdote? Or is that a question you can even answer? Yes, it wasn't funny, haha. It was one of those things you look back on and go, yeah, that was funny in hindsight. And he told it humorously. But it wasn't an out of touch, I backed my Lambo into a lake kind of thing. It was something that could have happened to anyone. And it's only because of the job he does that he got a fine from the association that his job is under. Other people do things like he did all the time and there is no fine. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay for my brother's wedding? My brother, 32 male, and his fiancée, 29 female, just got engaged and my parents immediately started planning everything. They're so extremely excited despite them being together over 5 years. In my mind, they're already married, but this should be a fun party. I'm pretty sure my brother and his fiancée both make more money than I do, but my parents said we were going to pay for everything. Apparently, that we meant me too. I don't live at home and I guess I make fine money, but I'm finishing up school and not really sure what to do next. My parents told me I was going to pay for the all-inclusive hotel reception, per person with a minimum of 50, so a minimum of about $7,000. I laughed about this and said no, but then they got really serious and said I needed to ask my gift to them. I probably also have to get a gift. Then they made the announcement to the entire family on both sides that I was doing this. I told everyone that I wasn't. My brother and his fiancée never asked me to, but my parents say I have to, and that I'm not being supportive by not helping. I don't have a real reason to not pay for it other than I don't want to. I know it might be selfish, but over $7,000 is a lot for me, and I don't want to spend it on someone else's party. I just don't want to, and now my parents are acting like I'm the a-hole for not wanting to. They say it's tradition, but I don't fully see how. My parents didn't pay for their siblings' weddings and they eloped, so I'm not sure where this tradition would be coming from. I'm conflicted because if I maxed my credit card, then I could pay for the wedding. I just really don't want to. Am I the a-hole? Edit. For those asking/mentioning it, yes, my parents know this would be done on my credit card. When I told them I didn't have the money, they said they'd put it on my credit card. They think that's fine because I just maxed it on my own food and random stuff anyways. To be honest, probably not wrong, so this would stop me from doing that. Also, it's not my money but my credit, which I don't like because I try really hard to have good credit. And my parents have a tendency to expect me to give up my time/space/things/money for my siblings, so this honestly doesn't surprise me much. My brother's been on vacation, where he proposed last week, and doesn't know more than the "we're paying for it" to my knowledge. When I told them again yesterday that I wasn't going to do that, they seemed really insulted and asked why wouldn't you, but hearing that this isn't a normal expectation is really helpful. Thank you. Now for the top comments. I don't want to is a perfectly valid reason since you are not directly involved in the wedding. You are long past the age where your parents can tell you what to do. Not stay home. It's much easier to simply say, I don't have the money for that. OP, write a gracious note to your brother saying that while you know he would never ask such a crazy thing, but you feel bad about not being able to contribute to his wedding financially. And so, of course, you want to formally absolve him of his obligation to help pay for your wedding no matter how much your parents insist. Tell everyone that you've already told your brother that he doesn't have to pay for your wedding, so everything is fair. And don't respond further. Not the a-hole. That is just weird. I've heard a lot of wedding traditions, but never this one. Never max your credit card for any party. Not even your own wedding. Your parents have cracked. Or are on crack. What the actual heck? Your parents are unhinged. They don't get to decide what to do with your money. It sounds like they can't afford to pay for the wedding, but if that's the case, they should say so. Not try to make it your responsibility. Also, if your brother and fiancé have been together for over 5 years, then they can damn well pay for their wedding themselves. Do not put yourself into a bad financial situation by entertaining this nonsense. Say no, and refuse to discuss any further. If they bring it up, hang up or walk away. Not stay home. Truthfully, it's not even his money. He'd have to max out his credit card, so it'd be borrowed money. They're trying to spend money he doesn't even have. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not replacing one of my groomsmen after he cheated on a bridesmaid? My fiancé and I are getting married in 2 months. I have 4 groomsmen, including my brother, cousin, a close childhood friend, and close college buddy. My fiancé's best friend was in a long-term relationship with his childhood friend, but unfortunately for her, he got exposed as a cheater. I don't know the details of it, and honestly I don't want to, but I wasn't aware of the cheating prior to the time it was discovered. I feel that his relationship with her is none of my business. My fiancé, on the other hand, does. She now hates him and is demanding that I replace him. She said he'll be a toxic presence to our wedding because the woman he cheated on is going to be a bridesmaid. I was bothered by this. This guy is one of my closest friends. I've known him since we were 18 and I want him to be a groomsman. I said that they both can go and just set aside their beef for one day. After all, the day isn't about them. It's about us, and their relationship is none of our business. She said that she was putting her foot down on this and that my friend wouldn't be in her wedding. I said that if it's that big of a deal, she can drop his ex from the wedding, and that if she doesn't want that, then we can go along with the initial plan. She's been angry at me since, and hasn't relented on this. Am I the a-hole? I think you're incredibly naive to think they can just set aside their beef for one day because the wedding is about you and your fiancé. The bridesmaid and your friend are humans, not robots. And your fiancé will have to see your friend there too, and he is a scum in her eyes. Unfortunately, it does sound like you have to choose. I don't blame your fiancé for thinking that because it will cause unneeded drama at your wedding. And let's be clear, it's your friend's fault. So if anyone has to be kicked out of the wedding, it should be him, not the bridesmaid. So yeah, technically you're the a-hole. The real landmine being revealed here is that Opie and fiancé have very different views around cheating, as in Opie isn't bothered by it. His fiancé should be paying attention to this. My thoughts exactly. Opie, you're the a-hole. Different views on friendship too. Opie's fiancé doesn't want to put her best friend through needless pain, and is empathetic enough to be bothered by the idea of someone she loves spending her wedding day in some pained charade. Whereas Opie doesn't care, apparently. Even if I planned on an open marriage and concerns about cheating did apply to me, I would not marry someone whose ideas of loyalty or empathy were so incompatible with mine, who was so completely freaking uninterested in supporting a loved one through a difficult time. Can you imagine how emotional that poor girl would be? It's sick that he doesn't care at all about his fiancé and another person's feelings like that. I really hope Opie's fiancé sees this. You're the a-hole. Nice victim blaming. The cheater is the one who gets kicked to the curb. All you are doing is showing your fiancé that you will protect cheaters and give them a pass. She's going to wonder if you do that for your friends. They're likely doing the same for you. I hope she makes this her hill to die on, and she will learn whether she should marry someone who's willing to condone cheating. Edit/update. Fine, I freaking get it. I'll kick one of my best friends out to prove I'm not a cheater. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my uncle's second wife that she needs to understand his first wife will always be important to our family? My uncle Nick was married to my aunt Lana until her death 7 years ago. They were married before I was even born, so I grew up with her. I was 15 when she died, while my cousins, their kids, were 8, 7, and 5. My whole family adored Lana as though she was biologically one of us. They had known her most, if not all, of her life. My uncle met his second wife, Janet, 4 years ago. They started dating a few months later and they got married 2 years ago. Janet has struggled with the fact that Aunt Lana is still remembered by the family. We still mark the anniversary of her passing. We remember her birthday and leave stuff on her grave. My cousins talk about her a lot. They say how they wish she was still here. It's not that we dedicate our whole lives to it, but when someone brings up family photos, she's in many of them. Same with old family videos. She was also responsible for the flower garden in my grandparents' house, and there are a lot of memories of her. Janet has asked my parents and grandparents why we feel the need to remember Aunt Lana as though she was their daughter/sister instead of Nick's wife. Once, she grumbled that my youngest cousin spent his art class making something for his mom's grave for Mother's Day instead of making her something. She has asked my parents and grandparents to take down the old family photos that include Lana. It was my cousin's birthday party a couple of weeks ago where both sets of his grandparents were posing for a photo that he had brought up his mom, and Janet started grumbling and sulking that she had come up. I asked her if she was okay, and she said she hated mentions of that woman, that she had never seen in-laws as fond of a late daughter-in-law before, that they actually mourned her passing after so long. She said she had figured she would have stepped into her place by now. I told her she needed to understand that Aunt Lana was part of her history, was a big part of mine, and that she was always going to be part of our family and someone we loved. I told her we could love both of them, but as long as she competes with my aunt, she won't ever be able to get close to us, because she never tries to hide her feelings, and we can't just act like someone we love didn't exist. She had a tantrum where she called me an insensitive witch. She told me that I should have been dropping to my knees and apologizing for making her feel less than, but instead tell her she has no right to expect her place in the family to be put before a dead woman. I was shocked, as were the rest of the family who were very unhappy with her, especially Uncle Nick. But I do feel kind of bad. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Yo, what? She got mad because your cousin made something for their mother's grave? Not the a-hole. If you compete with the dead, even more so when they were well loved when they were alive, you're gonna lose. Hands down. I thought the same. She should stop trying erasing people and earn her own space. Exactly. She should be helping those kids celebrate their mother and forming her own niche herself. I know a man who lost his wife after a long struggle with cancer. She was the rock of the family, a huge part of the community, and an amazing woman. A few years later, the husband remarried. The second wife moved into the family home, and one of the first things she did was to set up a section of the living room to contain photos of her being the first wife, her and the husband, and her and the kids. She is incredibly respectful of the memory of the first wife, and because of that, she has created a space for herself in the family. I think it speaks volumes that you left that disagreement feeling bad, and she left it feeling angry. She sounds bitter and insecure. That's not on you or your family. That's a her thing. I always taught my kids that you can never have too much love in your life. That goes for people that have died as well. You'll never forget them, nor stop loving them. Clearly no one ever taught your aunt that lesson. I feel bad for your cousins. You're clearly not the a-hole, and I hope she gets some clarity. Like, sometimes people come into relationships like this and expect people to forget certain people because they're dead. Sorry, that is not how that works. Wild. Now, for the last story, am I the a-hole for cursing at my sister-in-law? For context, I, Charlotte, 30 female, and my husband, Cameron, 41 male, got married 3 years ago. We met when I was 24 and he was 35. My husband is a wealthy man, but I had no insight into his salary / savings, etc. when we married, and it was not a factor in my falling in love with him at all. We have an age gap of 11 years, and while the rest of my husband's family are fine with us, his sister, Amy, 39 female, has always been weird about it. When we got married, in her speech she made a comment about how when I was born, my husband was in middle school. I would have been fine with this comment, but the way she said it rubbed me in the wrong way. She made a few quips about me living the easy life and using my husband's credit card, etc. She basically made it seem like I was a gold digger in front of mine and my husband's entire family. This really angered me because I earn a good wage myself and I love my work. I didn't say anything about it, however, because I wanted to keep the peace. And over the years at family gatherings, she made comments about me using her brother as a human credit card. She would always give me a dirty look. And when we were one-on-one, she would tell me that my husband deserved better than someone who uses him for his money, and how she earns much more than me. This is just an insight into why my patience with her was thinning. Fast forward 4 years, I am pregnant with mine and my husband's first child. We had a baby shower of sorts in which my husband's sister was invited. I was hesitant to invite her as I had never clicked with her at all, and frankly I disliked her. During the party, I was talking to my other sister-in-law, Kelly, 36 female, whom I am close to as she is a great friend, and I just get along with her better. Amy was drinking, not heavily, when she came over and saw me and Kelly talking happily. She made a snippy comment about how I always left her out, and how she was always being pushed out of her brother's life by me, like how at my wedding she wasn't a bridesmaid but Kelly was. This was because I got along well with Kelly, and met my husband because I was friends with her, so of course she was in my wedding party. I was already at my wit's end with Amy after a comment she made about me using this baby to trap my husband into never getting a divorce. So I said to her, why would I make you my bridesmaid when you're such a witch to me all the time for no goddamn reason? There's always a problem with you. And frankly, Amy, I'm done with your BS. Go F yourself. And stormed off. My husband was upset that I'd said those things, but he understood why I felt that way, and that he would speak to Amy about it. Amy told my in-laws what I said, and I got a call from my mother-in-law asking me to apologize to Amy for what I said. Amy has also contacted me and told me repeatedly that I am an a-hole. I have spoken to my mother-in-law about how Amy has been saying rude things the whole time me and my husband have been together, and that I would not apologize to Amy. And if she wanted to meet her niece or nephew, that she would have to apologize to me. And now Amy is blowing up my phone even more. So am I the a-hole? I feel like what I said was justified, but maybe my pregnancy hormones are making me act irrationally. Edit? Since many people have commented, yes. My husband has spoken to his sister about her behavior and asked her to stop, but she gets upset and says that he's choosing me over her. Not the a-hole. Amy's family, especially your husband, should have addressed her comments and behaviors years ago. If they had, you wouldn't have felt that way you did at that moment. You owe no apologies unless Amy apologizes for bullying you for so long. Thank you. Like you said, she has always made comments about how I'm using her brother, and I'm so sick of it. My husband has confronted her about this on several occasions, but she just brushes it off and tells him to stop choosing his wife over his flesh and blood. Next time she says something like that, hit her with this. He did not choose his family. None of us do. He did, however, choose you as his wife. His primary family is now you and that baby, the family he chose to create. I'd be willing to bet if he actually had to choose between you, she'd lose. Warn her not to push it that far for her own sake. That's a very good point, but she's always been attached to my husband, and they're close. But they've drifted since this rift between me and her. Thank you for your support. Update 1. I have seen and read all of your guys' comments and I'm so grateful you all agree with me. I have tried to respond to all of you, but there's so many of you. I have decided to confront my husband about her and tell him that I want to go no contact with his sister. I will update you guys when I do. Update 2. I've spoken to my husband about going no contact with Amy, and I showed him this post and your guys' comments, and he told me I was totally out of line. He said that he would not stop talking to his sister, and that's ridiculous. He said that the idea of his sister never meeting our kid is ludicrous. I'm sat in the bathroom crying. I don't know what to do. He told me that this whole situation has been blown out of proportion and that the internet is feeding me a pack of lies. I know that this isn't an advice sub, but I need to know what to do. I don't want Amy anywhere near my precious baby. I've listened to you guys and I totally agree. But what's my next step here? I'm considering posting something to relationship advice because I genuinely don't know what to do.